Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back. Thanks for viewing my video. In this video, I do a random Q&A. This was suggested by Alice at Alice_WF4PU. In a comment she added on the Cozy Autumn book tag video I did, she asked if I ever considered doing a random Q&A, and I thought this was a really good idea. So on my last two weekly wrap-ups, the weekly wrap-ups for the weeks ending 10/18/2025 and 10/25/2025, I solicited questions and I got a fair amount thanks to those who submitted questions. The first questions I got were from Melodie at Melodie's Book Nook. Melodie says, I always enjoy Q&A videos. I've thought of some questions for you. Thank you, Melodie. Which crochet project that you've done are you most proud of? There's a few of them that I'm really most proud of because of their complexity. But I chose one, and that one is Barbie. Barbie has a color change partway through, goes from brown to pink, and for part of that color change you can't see here, but it goes brown to pink, back to brown to pink, and before it becomes totally pink. Had to create hair with bangs and then attach the hair. See the hair, and the hair is at a couple levels. There's a little part of the hair that goes down here, and there is a ponytail in the back here, and that has to be attached. There are both ears and hands. Those have to be created and attached. I sometimes struggle with the small parts because my hands sometimes cramp up a little bit with, just making the small parts. So there is also I guess you call it if it was real life, it'd be like an elastic, a scrunchie or something like that, that ties the ponytail back. So I'm particularly proud of Barbie because there's a lot that goes into this one. I struggle sometimes attaching the parts, the sewing part of it, so the hair can be especially difficult. So I would say this is the one I'm most proud of. As far as the things I've made from Everyday Crochet, The Complete Beginner's Guide by June Gilbank, I think I'm most proud of this. This is a color block pot holder. It has the multiple colors, and there's two sides of it too, there's two layers. There's a side here, and there's a layer here. You have the edging, you go around here. It's very solid. It actually would be a good pot holder. I would feel comfortable using this as a pot holder. So I'm most proud of this of the projects I created from the book. And the second question from Melodie is, do you have a number one all-time favorite book? I don't have a clear number one all-time favorite book, but I thought about the books that I've read more than once. Figured I'd pick one from there. One I'm picking is War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I've read that 3 times at widely spaced out times, and I've enjoyed it every time. Not a 5-star read for me necessarily, but just one that on repeated reads I really enjoy. The most influential book that I've read is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Her approach to decluttering really speaks to me. The idea of determining if something sparks joy. So it's the most influential book that I've read. Melodie's third question is, what makes you like women's basketball specifically? Nothing wrong with it. I'm just curious how you came to like it compared to other sports. There was a time in the 1980s into the early 1990s when the only women's basketball I was able to see was the women's Final Four, and I did enjoy it. In the 1993-1994 season, the local PBS station, CPTV, Connecticut Public Television, televised a few UConn women's basketball games, and I enjoyed them. Prior to the 1994-1995 season, the local paper, the Hartford Courant, had an ad which included an application to get season tickets to the UConn women's basketball team. And kind of on a whim, I sent in an application, did get the tickets. I alternated going with my mother and my father to the games. I had 2 tickets and very much enjoyed them. The games were at Gamble Pavilion on the UConn campus, and if the games weren't sold out, they were pretty close to it. I can't remember quite for sure. Crowd was very enthusiastic, and you didn't get that kind of crowd in team sports for women at that time, so it was pretty cool. And as it happened, they were undefeated that season and won the national championship. That was my start where I really started loving it. I kept loving it. I kept being a fan of UConn. I became a fan of the University of Hartford women's basketball team, which was the school I went to in West Hartford, Connecticut. I became a fan of the Connecticut Sun, a WNBA team which plays in Connecticut. So but that was kind of the start. And I just like the way women play basketball. They don't have the same athletic ability as men have, but the positive of that is they have to play more as a team. They can't depend as much upon their individual athletic talents. I just like the way they play. Melodie's 4th question is, do you know the exact number of concerts you've been to? If not, do you have an estimate? Sadly, I don't know the exact number. I, at one point, was keeping track. I'm not quite sure where that is now, if I could find it, but I stopped a long time ago. But back in 2014, I got hired for a job that there was training I had to do to actually perform the job they hired me for, and it took a while to get that. So beyond just studying stuff, I kind of got bored, so I figured I'll try to come up with all the concerts I've been to, just the ones I'm sure of. And I came up with around 500, and that was in 2014. And so I'm sure that the number is over 600 now. Been going since 1978, so it's a long period of time, but there were parts of my life I went to a lot of them. The late aughts, there was a year or two I was maybe going to 50 concerts a year. Talk about this more when I get back to doing my music series, which I talk about like it's kind of imminent. It's just that lately I've had a lot of ideas for book videos. But I will get back to it. I'll talk more about that. But it's at least 600 concerts. Next I have a question from Phillip at A Poet Reads to Write. Question, you often say how you rarely reread books. Why is that? What do you think you gain/miss in having this? What do you think you gain/miss in having this as a reading strategy? I'm curious. It always amazes me how differently we go about our reading programs. It's one of the things that most attracts me to your channel. Thanks for another wonderful video, Stuart. Thanks for your question, Phillip, and your kind words. What I gain by not rereading is simply that every book I don't reread is another new book I can read for the first time. And so many books out there and only so much time to read them. And it's not only books. I don't generally rewatch movies. I don't generally rewatch shows I like. But what I lose is that a reread, especially one fairly soon after the first read, you get a richer understanding of the book. You get a deeper understanding of the book. And I miss that by not rereading very much. And even if it wasn't a second read close to the first read, I do miss the opportunity to re-experience a book I really enjoyed. So that's what I miss. But overall, it's just I prefer reading a new book for the first time than rereading a book. That's why I haven't reread too much. From Alice at Alice-WF4PU. Hi Stuart, here are my questions for the Q&A. What is your favorite decade and why? Mine is the early 2000s. Put a lot of thought into this one. Was tempted to say it was maybe back when I was in high school in the 70s, that period, because many people think that's the greatest time of their life. I was tempted to say that, but I decided that it was the 2000s for me because I just went to a lot of events then. I went to a lot of sporting events, women's basketball games, women's soccer games, college soccer. At the University of Hartford women's soccer team, that's the school I went to, as I said earlier. And in the latter part of the aughts, I just was going to tons of concerts. There's a club in Hartford, Connecticut called the Webster Theater. Latter part of 2006, I started going there, and it was a really cool experience. There's two stages. Main stage holds about 1,300, and what they call the Webster Underground holds about 300. But just cool because you get pretty close to the bands. And most of the time there was like 3-4 bands on the bill. It was pretty cool going there. And I started to go to some small places in Northampton, Massachusetts. The Iron Horse, which was a supper club, holds about 250 people. The Pearl Street nightclub had a downstairs, upstairs. The downstairs was small, the upstairs was bigger. And the Calvin Theater, which is a smallish theater, about 1,500 people. There's a place in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Palladium, when full, holds about 2,500. So going to all those places and seeing the bands that went there, it was just a really cool period. I was still going to concerts in arenas and what they used to call sheds, the outdoor facilities. Just going to lots and lots of concerts and a fair amount of sporting events too. One kind of negative of that is that my mother's health started to decline. We learned she had vascular dementia in the latter part of the aughts. So that wasn't so great, but overall I was just going to a lot of stuff. I was just going to a lot of stuff then, so some job issues too, so there was some negatives, but I just think all the events I was going to made it my best decade. Alice's second question is, how do you know what you wanted to major in college, do for work? That's a great question. The funny thing is, although I plan a lot of little things to death, sometimes I kind of let my life go where it will. And I was good at math and science, and my parents went to I guess it's kind of a parent-teacher conference thing, where they asked, if your kid's good at math and science, what's a good thing to major in college? And the moderator there said engineering. So I decided to pursue engineering. Initially, I was planning to pursue a mechanical engineering degree. I can't remember why I chose mechanical. At the time, it wasn't like now, there's more versions of it. At the time, there was mainly mechanical, electrical, and civil engineering. Applied to several colleges. I got into 3 of the 4. Ended up going to the one I did because I got a partial scholarship, and that made it, as a private college, equal to my other main choice, which was University of Connecticut, which was a public college. So went to University of Hartford. First year there, everyone studies the same, and then at the end of the first year, you declare which type of engineering you want to major in. Partway through that year, the roof of the Hartford Civic Center, Hartford, Connecticut, place I went to a lot, collapsed because of heavy snow. And that made me think I didn't necessarily want to be involved in something that could cause such problems with people. So I changed from my planned major of mechanical engineering to electrical engineering, not really thinking about the fact that faulty electronic problem, not thinking really about the fact that faulty electric and electronic components can cause all kinds of issues. But that's why I went to pursue an electrical engineering degree. Then after I graduated from college, which was in 1981, I had 4 different jobs, and one of the jobs I did a little technical writing, and then another job I got hired as a technical writer. Didn't really work out too well. They had a cutback, I got laid off. But then I got the opportunity to apply to Hamilton Standard, an aerospace manufacturer. Didn't get hired the first time, but they remembered me, and when they had to get rid of somebody for falsifying his background, they hired me. And my intention was to start out doing technical writing and then move to engineering, but didn't end up doing that. I worked there 18 years directly as a technical writer, and then 7 indirectly as a technical writer. Then I had a job as a import-export engineer. The main job I had for about 25 years was a technical writer. That's kind of the way the tides took me where I ended up, which I was fortunate because I made good money. I was able to save and invest money and was able to retire early. Alice's third question is, you could live in a video game world, which would it be and why? Like many of us who play video games, most of them are set in worlds that we probably wouldn't survive in. There's all kinds of battles and difficulties. But one game I played recently that I think I would like to live in is Tales of the Shire, which is a Lord of the Rings game. It's set, as the title would indicate, in the Shire. I would probably want it modernized a little bit because in the Shire they didn't have technology, at least modern technology, electronics and stuff like that. But it's a peaceful agrarian world, and that's one I at least could survive in. The fourth question is, what book world would you least want to find yourself in? There's a fair amount of those, but one that comes to mind is the world of Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. You learn at the beginning of this book that civilization as we knew it basically ended. And it's a very harsh world. There's genetically engineered animals that turn on people. It's just very difficult to survive in. Really, I could probably say a lot of dystopian post-apocalyptic worlds, but the one in Oryx and Crake is the one that most comes to mind to me. Alice's fifth question is, what is a TV series that you hold close to your heart and why? That is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Probably my favorite series of all time. I love a kick-ass heroine in Buffy. I love the Scooby Gang, that they are a tight-knit group with Buffy to support each other. Even though they don't necessarily have Buffy's skills, they're there for her. They all had each other's backs. The sixth question is, what is your favorite animal? That'd be a house cat. With all due respect to dog people, cats are my favorite animal. House cats. The seventh question is, do you have a special Christmas memory? I have a very vivid memory from early on in my life. I remember sometime, maybe 1, 2 o'clock, I can't remember the exact time, but it was well after everyone was in bed, but before everybody got up. I got up to go to the bathroom, and I looked into the living room, which is where we had our tree, and there was like just a ton of tree. There was a ton of presents under the tree, and I just remember thinking, man, Santa came. This is going to be great. Lots of other good memories, but that's one particularly vivid memory of mine from early on in my life. The 8th question is, if you had to dye your hair a different fun color, what would it be? I had to think a little bit about this. It would be a bright red. I am going to include a graphic or two showing what I'd like to get if I did that. It wouldn't be a nice, like, real life red. It would be something like the teal I have now. It doesn't grow naturally on people. Truth be told, this question made me think that I might consider that. Next time I go see my hairdresser, I'll probably just discuss it with her, just see what would be involved in that. I'm not sure I would do it or not, but just see what would be involved. I would defer to her judgment too. She's been doing my hair for decades. We become personal friends, and if I suggested something, she thought, well, maybe something would be, you might want to try this one instead, I might. And I'm not saying I would do it even, but I would take her opinion into what I decided to do. She was the one not long ago. She suggested I might want to grow my hair a little longer as time goes by, so she's been cutting a little longer, and I think that was a good idea. I like it a little longer. And Alice had a final thought. These are a lot of questions, so feel free to pick and choose. Laugh out loud. Looking forward to it. I did answer all your questions. Thank you for all of them. Mick at Mick Has Read a Book says, hello again, Stuart. I have a straightforward question for your Q&A video. Do you have specific genres that you prefer, and do you have authors that appeal to you when you visit a bookstore? I don't actually have a strong genre preference. Per Storygraph, my top genre this year is literary at 29%. And literary books can be in many different genres. I tend to gravitate towards fantasy and romance and YA when I go in a bookstore. There is tables in the front of the store that contain romance books, fantasy books, and I always go to the YA section. Actually, I do a tour of the bookstore, but those are genres that I gravitate to. One thing I don't gravitate to that much is like the nonfiction section. I kind of go through that more quickly. I'm drawn to authors like Ali Hazelwood, Emily Henry, Taylor Jenkins Reid, Stephen King. During my last library visit, I was drawn to a T. Kingfisher book, Hemlock and Silver. I've read a couple of her books, so when I saw another book, I was drawn to it. Because I watch so many booktuber videos, and I've been doing so for the past several years, I'm often drawn to books that I hear booktubers talk about, especially when they're on the display tables that Barnes & Noble has a bunch of that you see right when you enter. So when I see books, authors that I've heard booktubers talk about, those are books that I tend to sometimes at least pick up and consider because they're in my head. A month or two ago, I did visit the local Barnes & Noble to try to get the deluxe special edition of Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. It had been released the day before. I was able to get it. I, number one, went to the bookstore for that reason. A book that I've heard a lot of talked about on here, and I enjoyed her Yellowface, the only book of hers I read. So I specifically went to get that book at the bookstore. Of course, I bought other books. And Mick adds, and similarly, are there any genres, authors that you keep away from, perhaps because you've read something and learned that's not for you, or simply by reputation reviews you steer well clear of? The one genre I steer mostly clear of is political books. I've been on Storygraph about 3.5 years, and in all that time I've only read one book that Storygraph classifies as political. And the reason I steer clear of those books is that I don't know how to determine whether the author who writes the book is logically assessing all the relevant facts and then come to a conclusion, or is taking a biased view of the facts, picking and choosing the facts, exaggerating the facts, and just kind of come to the conclusion they want to come to. I would be okay if I was confident somebody was considering all the relevant facts and using logic to come to a conclusion, even if that differed from my view. But I know no way of determining that. So I don't really know what's benefit reading political books would be to me. I mean, I suppose I could take books that appeared they were maybe biased for coming from both sides and read both, but I'm not really sure the point of that. And at my age, even if one, I don't really trust them, and two, even if I thought they made a good argument, I'm not sure to change my opinion anyway because of my age. Kind of gets settled in your views by the age I am. The second part of this question is, are there any authors that you keep away from, perhaps because you've read something and learned that it's not for you, or simply by reputation/reviews you steer well clear of them? There's some authors that I wouldn't get anything from, but because of things they've done, but I don't have any impulse to get something from them anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense to mention them. One author I probably would steer clear of now is Neil Gaiman. In the late 90s, early aughts, I read his Sandman series and I really liked it. Not too long ago, I read my first novel from him, The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I really liked it, but there's stuff he did, I'm not going to discuss it here, that I don't think I want to support someone like him, so I wouldn't get anything from Neil Gaiman anymore, I don't think. But even with him, there's not a strong impulse to get something from him. It's just he is someone I loved at one point. I did love the novel. One author I'd have to think about that is, I haven't read anything from yet, but I have a book from her. The author is Jessa Hastings, and the book I have is Magnolia Parks. I haven't read it yet. She said some stuff about AI, and there's been some stuff revealed about her younger years where she said some pretty offensive stuff. Because I already have Magnolia Parks, I'm going to read it. And if I like it, then I would have a decision to make whether I want to continue reading her books or how I would do it. One of the ways you can do that is that if you don't want to support the author directly, you could borrow a physical book from the library or buy one of her books at a secondhand bookstore. So at some point I'm going to have to make a decision on her. Those are the only two authors I can think of where, Gaiman, who I loved, and Jessa Hastings, who I have yet to read a book from her, but I have one. And then I have a decision to make if I wanted to continue and how I would do it. Of course, I might not like the book, so then it would be a moot point. Brian at Casper's Mystery Corner asks, question, if you could choose 3 authors from any time period, who would you pick for each of the following? One to share a drink with, one to share a meal with, one to have a deep conversation with. Why these choices? But this was a tough one. I had to put a lot of thought into it. But ultimately I decided that I'd like to share a drink with Allie Hazelwood. I've never actually completed any of her books. I've only read part of one, and I didn't stop because I didn't like it. I do have several other books I want to read. But I chose this because I watched a couple of virtual events where she was in discussion about whatever book she was pushing at that time. The last one was Bride, which I haven't read, but she just looks like a fun person to sit down and talk to in a more kind of relaxed environment. Just kind of talk back and forth, and she just seems like a fun person to talk to based upon the virtual events I watched. I like to share a meal with Jasmine Gallimore. I just like to, one, ask how she has so many different ideas and releases so many different books. She's very prolific. I'd like to ask how she does it. And a few years back, she went from traditionally published to being an indie author, and that has some issues with her. She can't get the rights to all of her books back, and I just like to talk to her about. I see what she says sometimes on her website, but I like to talk to her and just see face to face what she thought about that transition. And I like to have a deep conversation with Stephen King. I like to talk about his long career, what he thinks looking back on it. I like to tell him how much I love the older characters and you like it darker, and how that's great to see, because for a popular author like him to write older characters, which some of those characters really resonated with me in that book. I could really feel where they were coming from. I'm sure there's authors who write about older characters, but I don't know if there's any of them with the popularity of Stephen King with his range and the reach he has. I like to discuss with him how his writing has changed over the years. I like to talk to him about. I like to ask him how he feels about his books being so frequently banned. Again, I could come up with more, but I think these are 3 good choices for this question. And Brian adds, if you could swap lives with a character for a day, who would it be? That character, I think, would be the vampire Lestat. When I was reading Memnoch the Devil recently, early on in the book, Lestat was out well after dark in New York City in a snowy evening, and it just struck me that I would be so scared being out there, good chance I'm going to be mugged or whatever, but if I was a vampire, those fears just aren't there. I could be out in a snowy night, I wouldn't feel the cold so much, or if I felt it, it wouldn't hurt me. Anybody tried to mug me, it wouldn't end up well for them. So I'm not sure about immortality. That comes with some negatives, but just the idea of being able to be safe in places that as a person would put myself at great risk. Could be other vampires, but Lestat is the one I think of because of that. I did think that at the beginning of Memnoch the Devil, how it'd be kind of cool to be him in that situation. And the benefits of being a incredibly strong creature with powers. Not a question that was directed for this video, but I thought it'd be good, something that'd be good to explain here. Alice at Alice-WF4PU. And I commented on a recent video of mine where I talked about Ashnico's music. She said she got a ticket to see Ashnico, and did I get a ticket myself? And thought it might be good to explain why I haven't actually, after going to lots of concerts in my life, like I said in the earlier question, Melodie's question, I've been to over 600, haven't been in a couple years. What happened is, back in 2019, I went to probably 15 concerts. Then in 2020, I went to a concert February 29, and then the bottom dropped out with a pandemic. Everything was canceled. Didn't go to another concert for about a year and a half. I did go to a few basketball games, and I never got back going to the amount of concerts I went to before. In 2021, I went to 3 concerts and a comedy show, which is kind of like a concert. 2022, I went to 3 concerts. 2023, I went to 3 concerts. But then, as I'm retired, I can pick the times when I go to things, and I don't need to go to stuff after dark. What happened is, In 2024, I wasn't going out after dark, and I did go to a basketball game 2024 after dark, but driving after dark was mostly okay, but I hit a construction zone and all the lights in it really made me nervous. And I just don't now feel like the last time I went out after dark was early December, last December. I just don't feel confident going out after dark. And I mentally debate, should I try to get more comfortable again? I guess I could drive around locally and get more comfortable going after dark. But I'm not sure if I really want to do so. So for me to go to, assuming I'm not willing to get comfortable going out after dark again, I would have to, and also, I should also say I don't drive that much anymore, so I'll talk when I get back to my music series about how I, drove to some concerts. I'm not comfortable going to concerts. I'm not comfortable driving myself like I used to, cities in different states anymore, so I'd have to become familiar I'd have to get familiar with mass transit, like trains and stuff like that, taxis and stuff like that. I could do it, but just not sure how willing I am to make the effort. See Ash Nico on this tour, and I'd love to see her. She's my favorite artist. But I would have to, she's playing in Boston, which is the closest one to me. She probably played in New York too, that's closer, but that's close too. But if I was to go, I'd go to a Boston show, but I'd have to get familiar with the mass transit, probably rent a hotel room, and all that's okay. I'm just, I mentally debate what I want to do. I hate not the fact that I haven't gone to concerts in a couple of years, but it's just there's the driving after dark issue, and there's I'm not willing to drive, say, 2-3 hours like I was not too long ago. So question wasn't really asked, but I thought this was a good time to discuss this. So thank you, Alice. And from Maeve at Maeve_ever_reading. How long have you been dyeing your hair and what do you use? The dyeing is done by the woman who cuts my hair. I don't actually know the brand. I know she is on the second dye she's using for me. She kind of fine-tunes things, makes sure everything works well. My sister goes to the same hairdresser as me, and back late in 2022, our hairdresser has suggested that my sister might want to try doing something called balayage, which I learned is a tinting. It's not like a full dye. And my sister didn't want to do it, but that got me thinking about doing it myself, so I asked my hairdresser to do it for me. So on December 22, 2022, she did teal balayage on my hair for the first time, and continue to have her do it. Generally, I go every 6 weeks. And in February 8th, 2024, I had her do my first full teal coloring, and I've continued to have her do it since. I just decided that instead of trying to think, well, don't do this, I'm too old, I thought, well, I want to have it done, and why not have it done? So just go the whole hog, and I did. And that was February 8th, 2024. And I'm really happy that I did. As I said above in an answer to one of Alice's questions, when she asked what other color would I, if I had another color dye, which would it be? And I said a bright red. Because of Alice's questions, I'm kind of maybe thinking of at least talking to my hairdresser, see what would be involved if I made a color change. Not sure I would do it, but I might at least consider it. And Maeve asked, what's your favorite book of the year so far? It's a tough call. I've had a fair amount of 5-star books. The one I'm picking is Bunny by Mona Awad. Now, kind of a caveat, I read it recently. Generally, I think it's a good idea to sit on things for longer, but I'm going to go with that for now. It's certainly a book I liked a lot. And I don't think my liking of it will decrease with time. Thank you to everyone who sent me questions. I appreciate it. Just before I'm recording this segment, I look back on the last 2 weekly videos, the ones where I solicited questions, and it appears I answered all the questions I was asked on those videos. Thanks to everyone who submitted their questions. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy the answers. Everyone who submitted their questions except for Alice has an active BookTube channel, so you might want to take a look at their channels. They're all great channels. You might want to subscribe to Alice too. She did do videos a while back. Not sure if she has any plans for doing them again, but thanks to everyone who asked questions. All great supporters of the channel. I appreciate your support. If anyone thinks of any questions that anyone didn't submit questions, or anyone thinks of other questions you'd like to ask me, please add a comment. I'll either answer in the comments or I'll add them to the video I intend to do in December on my 2-year anniversary. If anyone would like to add their own answers to any of these questions, please do so in my comments. If you can't think of anything else you'd like to comment, please add an emoji. Just pick one of your choice. I hope you're having a wonderful reading week. I hope you're having a wonderful week in general. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos.